All right, well, it's been a couple months here, and I'm ready to start back on this SVT Focus project here. It's been sitting in my garage long enough, so it already got dusty again. Basically, if you watched the previous video, you would have seen that it basically was run out of oil, allegedly, and that the transmission and everything on the original engine was fine. And then I purchased this long block. It was actually fully dressed, and then also this transmission off of Facebook, and was told that it was ready to go as well, but I paid for it with a price as if it was just a core, you know. I couldn't trust Facebook, you know. So I stripped this engine down to pretty much a bare long block now, and ready to kind of dig in. The only reason that I'm tearing this apart is because if you look inside, and this was covered in the last video, the rods are visibly different. This engine, which has been allegedly rebuilt, to that engine, which has not. So the difference is what concerns me. And so just to be sure, I'm going to pull this thing apart and take a look and see what we see. Make sure everything's correct. So the first step in this process is going to be to take the cylinder head off. Basically, to do that, you obviously have to take the head bolts out, and the head bolts are tucked way down into that bore. You can see the little star. But first we'll take the cams off, and then we'll get at the head bolts. Alright, so now we're going to get after the head bolts here. The camshafts are out, obviously. And so basically we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 more makes 10. And then when I was taking the intake camshaft out, the phaser was still on the end of this cam, and it kind of sits here like this and kind of encapsulates this end boss right here. Anyway, I was able to wiggle it off of there, but I did kind of nick the surface right here, so I'm gonna have to clean that up a little bit, but that's okay. We'll be all right, and get this cylinder head off of here. All right, so I kind of wiped things down, took the head gasket off. This head surface here has been it looks to me touched at some point with something. I don't know. Previous owner did something there. So I'm probably going to continue to dig this all the way out. At this point, I've gotten early indication that these are not. I've been comparing pictures. These I don't think look like factory SVT Focus pistons. So I think just to eliminate the unknowns, we better tear it all the way apart. Alright, well, I got the short block here mounted onto our little stand here. I don't think it was really made for 4 cylinders, but it'll work. And we're going to flip it over and pop things open, see what we have inside. Alright, so I took the oil pan off, and then actually had to bend it to get it off of there. It was so glued on there that there was no getting that off without breaking it, so maybe it can be fixed, who knows. But anyway, and then I pulled the pickup tube off, which is plastic, which is kind of weird. So now we can take this lower section off and see what we find. got this thing pulled apart now, and don't see any oil squirters inside there. I don't see the right rods visually. Obviously the pistons are different, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that these are Z-Tech components and not the SVT parts that I'm really looking for, which is fine. Ultimately I didn't pay very much money for it, and I got a transmission, a bunch of other components, and I'm pretty sure this is actually an SVT head. So that's just the way it goes. What I do have is still the original engine from the car. I think this was supposed to have been run out of oil was the issue, so who knows what kind of horrors await inside this. That was kind of why I was hoping not to have to get into it, but I will probably tear it apart and see what parts can be used. Alright, well, I pulled the cylinder head off the second engine here, and that looks to be an actual SVT piston, which is good. I can see the oil squirters through the side of the block, and the rods look to be a different profile as well. So this appears to be legit. I actually sprayed some WD onto the cylinder walls. I don't want anything to be rusting now that it's exposed. They have a ton of carbon built up on them, you know, kind of nasty, so those will probably get cleaned off at some point. But one thing I did notice is that when you push down on when the front and back cylinders are going down like that, you know, you don't get any noise there, no noise there, no noise there. Now listen here, you get kind of a nice hollow thunk, and to me that kind of indicates that it kind of seems like that rod bearing's probably not in super great health, so they're probably gonna crack it open and take a look. But anyway, the other ones don't appear to do that. You know, they seem in pretty good shape, but that one, this last cylinder when it's going, or first, I don't know which direction we are here, but that one right there, that to me is kind of a strange sound. So anyway, gonna have to do a little further investigation. Okay, so I got the upper oil pan or the girdle or whatever it's called off here, and kind of like what we suspected, that would be a bad rod bearing there. At least I don't see any bearing material in the pan really, so I'm a little confused by that, but that's still doesn't change the fact that that is probably not allowable, whereas this here is more what you want. So really rigid and stiff. So anyway, that's gonna have to come out and see what's going on. Okay, so I got the rear main seal off there. There's just 4 bolts, take that off. And then the oil pump has like 7 bolts or something, and that pulls off the front. So now I can undo the main caps and the rod bearing caps as well. I'll start with the rod bearings. I'll undo these 2 here and then push the piston out the bottom and do that for all 4, and then I'll come back and hit the main caps. so I got kind of a mess here, but this is piston 1, 2, 3, and 4, and number 4 was the one with the suspect spun rod. And so basically, if you peel this bearing out, it looks a little thin, maybe, but most notably the tang is gone on the bearing. It had been smashed through, and then same here on this. This is the top shell. You can see the tang had been basically hammered flat and was no longer holding the bearing into these grooves right here. And so if we do a comparison, let's just pull one of these out. Just look for a thickness check. The one that's on the inside, that would be the spun bearing, and then this is one that was not spun. So it had definitely eroded some of that distance and created some clearance there. So that's not ideal. I don't know if this rod is reusable or not. I guess we'll see, but if not, I'll have to get one more. Probably rod and piston, but it is probably how they'll be sold. But anyway, I'm gonna get things a little bit cleaned up here, and then get on to the crankshaft here. Alright, so the crank's out. I got the main bearing shells out. The thrust is on the center bearing there. You can actually see the little cutout right here. That little relief is for the thrust bearing, which is actually sitting down here in this pile of parts. But there's the thrust. That looks really kind of decent. There's the chunk missing from it, but other than that, not too terribly bad. So the mains looked, runnable. They looked like they probably would have been okay. But obviously you're not gonna not change those. So here's a handful of them. They obviously had metal run through them, but beyond that, I don't think any of these were the root cause. So anyway, I don't know what we're gonna do next. I do need the crank out of that motor because I think they're the same crank. So I'm thinking use this block, that crank, those rods and pistons, which are legit SVT ones, and then whichever head looks the best, and put it together. So that's kind of what I'm going for. We'll see if it works out.